If you have been following my channel, you know I'm not really a gaming channel. And if this is your first time watching my videos, hi there! And what a weird first video to start with. You should like and subscribe and share. I'm sorry. Going on. I wouldn't even consider myself a capital G gamer. I like video games enough. I mean, I did put in over 100 hours each in both Octopath Travelers and Traps of Midgard last year. But gaming isn't a big part of who I am, really. But I will say games have given me some of the most raw emotional feelings through their gameplay. Video games are an interactive narrative where your decisions push the story forward, or at least it makes you feel like your decisions matter. They allow you to feel excitement, fear, and sadness, and you are the ones in control of those actions. I think video games are a great way to tell a narrative because it puts you in the story as the character avatar. In a way, you're experiencing the emotions of the character with them for the first time and creating a somewhat shared experience. But hey, that's just a theory! I'm not gonna finish that. Sometimes though, games will feel so relatable that it hits you on a level that makes you feel weird, but oddly comforted. And that is how I feel about You Will Not Remain. You Will Not Remain is a 2D pixel graphic game made in 48 hours for the 2021 Women Game Jam, with a team consisting of 4 main people being programmed by Jordan Cook Irwin, written by Gabriella Logren, art by T-Dog Extreme, and music by Talia Rosa, and a few game testers. It is amazing and quite impressive that such a small, meaningful game was just made by a handful of people in such a short time. I like that kind of stuff. I don't know, I feel like it adds a bit of that underdog charm to me. You Will Not Remain is what I call an isolation simulator. You wake up, do the same thing over and over again. You make coffee, feed your plants, play fetch with your dog,
disassociate with your life and relive night terrors from your past that make you question your existence or if any of this is really real.
You know, just typical gamer things. But to add to this already eerie feeling to the plot is the looming eldritch monster outside that is causing the end of the world that you can see and marvel at while out on your balcony. That may be an excuse, I mean the reason for your isolation. Even though this is a 2D pixel story end of day simulator, it is one of the most relatable games I have played in a very long time. I too have questioned if a giant evil eldritch horror monster is looming over me and watching my every move to plan my utter demise. But all jokes aside, the eldritch horror and the fear of the unknown is just a metaphor for the current situation with the COVID-19 pandemic. With that in mind, we can really understand what this game is trying to convey and what it's all about. Before I go into the themes of this game, I need to let you know I am not a psychiatrist or a social scientist. The game's real focus is about social isolation and disassociation disorder, and the experiences and feelings of the people that were working on this game during the pandemic. After facing another lockdown after nearly 2 years of them, we decided to make a game that explored our collective experiences with isolation from each other and the world. The game's writer, Gabriella Logren, told Mashable in a recent interview about this game. So, social isolation is the lack of social contacts and having few people to interact with regularly. And for most of us, the pandemic has created a social isolation bubble. Allison Abbott wrote about this saying this: more than 42% of people surveyed by the US Census Bureau in December reported symptoms of anxiety or depression in December, an increase from 11% the previous year. Data from other surveys suggest the picture is similar worldwide. Studies and surveys conducted so far in the pandemic consistently show that young people rather than older people are most vulnerable to increased psychological distress, perhaps because their need for social interactions are stronger. Data also suggests that young women are more vulnerable than young men, and people with young children or a previously diagnosed psychiatric disorder are at particularly high risk for mental health problems. And the game's main focus is the portrayal of a previously diagnosed psychiatric disorder and the higher risk of mental health problems you have during isolation. In the first moments of the game, you can tell the main character is lonely without any words or dialogue. Just for a few seconds before the game starts, you really are just sitting there looking at this messy apartment, lingering. You can tell the type of person the nameless character is. You soak in that you are alone in this room with the melancholy music in the background. Then you can go out and look at your balcony and see the giant Eldritch monster looming over you. It's so big that it makes you feel very small in comparison. Not only that, but you find out as the 30+ minute experience keeps going that you are literally alone in this apartment building. Everyone left. Everyone but you. Your character notices this not because you, the player, get to see them around or leaving, but your character starts talking about how they started hearing them less and less, until one day they no longer heard them. They no longer hear anyone, and through the dialogue, you see this toll of loneliness the character has endured because of this. That's when your lovable dog friend Lambshanks comes into the picture. You meet them in a dark, empty apartment. The feeling of the lonely apartment makes you uncomfortable, but the lovable new dog you find, Lambshanks, makes you feel more at ease with being in there. But you feel better when you and that new doggo leave the empty place. I think the adding of the dog as a companion during this lonely time is wonderful because it helps your character confront their loneliness as they try to be better because now they have another individual to take care of, but also shows having a support animal isn't a cure-all for your mental health. The character's anxieties about the world around them are still lingering there in the back of their heads. Another thing this game does subtly is make you piece together the main character's past trauma that is looming over them. There are dream sequences in this game when you fall asleep that you listen to a radio and you pick up on that the main character is dealing with some kind of loss due to this eldritch horror. Know that it has an impact on how the main character is acting in their dialogue. Delayed responses of trauma can include persistent fatigue, sleep disorders, nightmares, fear of recurrence, anxiety focused on flashbacks, depression, and avoidance of emotions, sensations, or activities that are associated with the trauma even remotely. The main character embodies and portrays a bunch of these symptoms of delayed trauma. They don't really eat or drink much, they have horrible nightmares and flashbacks, and whenever that person lingers in their head, they immediately try to forget it one way or another. This game's big thing is that it says it's talking about depression and anxieties, which yeah, I can see where they're coming from the lack of colors and black and white aesthetics helps with the feeling of not feeling right and all there. But where this game really shines to me is how they portray disassociation. Disassociation is a mental process that severs connections among a person's thoughts, memories, feelings, actions, and/or sense of identity. Most of us have experienced disassociation, losing the ability to recall or track a particular actions, example, arriving to work but not remembering the last minutes of the drive. Disassociation happens because the person is engaged in an automatic activity and is not paying attention to his or her immediate environment. Disassociation can also occur during severe stress or trauma as a protective element whereby individual incurs distortion of time, space, or identity. This is a common symptom in traumatic stress reactions. Disassociation helps distance the experience from the individual. People who have experienced severe or developmental trauma may have learned to separate themselves from distress to survive. At times, disassociation can be very persuasive and symptomatic of a mental disorder. According to the DSM-5, dissociative disorders are characterized by the disruption of and/or discontinuity in the normal integration of consciousness, memory, identity, emotion, perception, body representation, motor control, and behavior. So I think how this game handles the character's disassociation with this world is really well done and feels very real. The way they make you question whether time has been passing through the character's dialogue and reactions to certain things is very fascinating because the game is an hour-long experience, but how long you're in the actual game is a mystery. Through context clues, you can tell there may be big passes of time with how dry the soil is in their plant. But you don't really know, have you been in this game universe for just 30 minutes? Or have we been with this character for just a couple of days? Or is it a couple of weeks? It could have been months. Could we have been seeing years of their life go by in just a blink of this 30-minute game? Time doesn't exist really for us, the player, because of course it's the game world. Time can go by differently in game than they do in real life. But in the game world, it doesn't exist for the main character either. All we know is that they have been isolated for at least a day, but we don't know how long they've been alone. And neither do they, because to them everything seems to have just happened, or maybe hasn't happened at all. You don't question it really, it's just business as usual. The gameplay also makes you feel like you're disassociating though. It's all clockwork, you do the same thing over and over again. You wake up, feed your plants, drink coffee, feed Lambshanks, throw them the ball. But the characters' comments about how many times they did this, or whether or not they've recently did this, already really come off like a natural portrayal of disassociation. We, the player, know this is the first time we're doing this during the start of the day because there's a purple pixel outline around the TV, the coffee, and the dog bowl. The way they portray disassociation in this game, it feels very real because I've had lapses of absent-mindedness, like did I lock the door? Is the stove still on? The main character does that same thing constantly, having to reassure themselves that this is the first time and they're really doing it. I love how the aesthetic helps elevate the themes I've talked about. The music feels calm yet really lonely at the same time with the lo-fi rhythm to it. I think the choice of making the Eldritch Horror outside an allegory to the pandemic and being locked in was genius because like in Eldritch Horror, we don't know what the virus looks like, but we know that it is dangerous and it's looming around us. At any moment we could be affected by it and the safest way is to stay at home, but that isolation can also affect us just as much as the horrors outside. I felt that writing a story purely about lockdown would be too raw for both us and our audience, so decided the game needed an external reason that could be a stand-in for the pandemic. Personally love Eldritch Horror, as does the rest of the team, and our artist T-Dog Extreme knew that it would be a strong visual motif. Thematically it ended up working, and the strong visuals are the key part of that. Writer Gabriella Logren said in that Mashable article about the themes and the visuals. And the art of this game feels very surreal. Our apartment looks like a normal pixelated reality to what a small studio apartment might look like in a 2D aesthetic. But then we see our main character. They look semi-human, but just a little off in small details. The head is kind of demon-like, so to you the player, it feels very similar but a little unnatural. That is until you meet Lambshanks for the first time and the character questions why the dog looks like that. And your character says the dog looks off, that it wasn't looking like a normal dog. So the question you as the player now asks is this really what the character looks like, or is this what the character thinks they look like? Maybe that something is a little off in them and that's what makes them look off. Invariably playful and disturbing at the same time, the surrealist object insists on the rich poetic and emotional resonance that inform your relationship to the everyday material world. I saw this quote about surrealist art looking up stuff about this topic for this video, and I think the art in this game portrays this quote. It's both fun yet bizarre and uncomfortable. Where the visual is incredibly stunning is whenever you see the Eldritch monster in the background. You are told how threatening it can be, but it doesn't do anything to you, it just looms over you. And it never leaves the frame. Wherever you move on the balcony, you can still see it. And even when you aren't looking at it, you know it's still out there, pulsing. The thought of the Eldritch monster never leaves your mind. It's safe to say I personally love You Will Not Remain a lot. It was an experience for me because the emotion the character is facing are ones that I feel a lot and have felt a lot since the pandemic started. I haven't seen my family for almost 3 years. I work from home and I am confined in just a small apartment. Luckily I have a roommate and a cat, or I could call my family when I needed to keep me sane. But there are some people during this time that didn't have that luxury. There is something cathartic about watching this game play out and relating to some of the emotions and anxieties your character is feeling. And that is why I enjoyed You Will Not Remain, this weird isolation simulator. Hey guys, thanks for watching the new video. I don't know if I'm going to post a lot more in these upcoming months. I'm going to be moving back to the Midwest soon, and so that's taken a lot of priority. But don't worry, I'll be back with some if I have some other thoughts. But follow me on Twitter if you want to hear some of my bad hot takes and, just see me be a goof. I'll see you guys sometime with the next video, but if you haven't heard it today, whatever you're going through, you've got this, cowboy.